When I was about 10 or so, my family and I moved into an old house that was built back in the 80s. Even though it was well over 40 years old, it was still in pretty good condition and was still worth money. We had moved into the house in late December, right before school let out for winter break, which had been a major hassle with Christmas right around the corner. Every Christmas, we always think back on this one Christmas Eve which changed the way we thought of the holiday. Anyway, it was Christmas Eve night and we had all just finished eating and I was getting ready for bed. Around this time in my life, I was maturing and became skeptical of whether or not Santa was real. I mean, I'm sure every child thinks of this at one point. For a few years, I had these little cool tree cameras that stay on for hours, and earlier that day I had hid them somewhere so they could be filming the tree. Now, in my mind, I thought I would catch my parents in the act of placing presents under the tree. But to my surprise, when I turned on the cameras, the presents had already been there. I jumped with excitement, trying to be as quiet as possible. But that's when I saw something else appear from the corner of the camera. I take a look at my iPad where the live feed was connected to, and saw someone appearing from the hallway. Now, in my 10-year-old state of mind, I immediately thought it was Santa Claus. However, upon a closer look, I came to the realization that it wasn't Santa at all, but rather some guy who I've never seen before wearing nothing that even resembled Santa. I knew that it couldn't have been my dad, as my dad is way bigger, and it definitely wasn't my mom. It was at this point when I came to the realization that there was someone in the damn house. My eyes filled with fear as I saw this person proceed to take the presents and put them in a black garbage bag. Trying not to scream at this point, I go over quietly to my parents' room and explain what was taking place in the living room. At first, they woke up annoyed and didn't seem to take me seriously. But once I showed them my tablet, my dad then grabs his crowbar that he keeps under his bed and runs out into the room. He goes out into the living room, screaming like a madman when I hear a loud bang followed by my dad screaming. My mom and I run over to him and find him on the floor holding his right shoulder. It was then when I realized that my dad had been shot. It didn't take long for my mom to get on the phone and have the police show up. But like in most situations like this, the man was gone and had took half of the gifts. Turns out, this man had broken into our house through the sunroom and somehow found his way to the presents. I'm not sure why we were the only ones targeted, but I didn't want to know. Fortunately, my dad had survived the shooting and recovered within a few days. Either way, this was the most terrifying encounter of my life. This story took place about 5 years ago on Christmas Eve night. I was a single mother living in a small 2-bedroom house with my one and only child, Matthew. He was around 9 at the time, and with Christmas upon us, I sent him to bed early and told him that Santa would be here in the morning. Without hesitation, Matthew immediately runs up to his bedroom and falls asleep, leaving me to tend to wrapping gifts. I had just finished placing some presents under the tree while finishing my tea when I hear a loud thump from upstairs. We live by a nature preserve, so oftentimes we'd get unwanted critters in the attic, and so I dismissed it as a mouse. However, I heard the same noise again, this time coming from downstairs and a bit louder. I went back downstairs, and to my shock, I saw that the lights to the Christmas tree were off and there was something standing beside it. I screamed in horror as this tall black figure emerged from behind the tree, making these loud thumps. The very same thumps I heard from earlier. I remember falling back on the floor, trying my best to control my breathing, having the strong feeling that something was watching me. I'd say I was curled up into a ball for about a solid 5 minutes before gathering the courage to look up. But at the same time, I was too terrified to do it. Just then, the light to the living room turned on and Matthew came down and I looked up. There was nobody there. This took place in 2014 when I was 15 years old, and it's probably the most terrifying thing that I've ever encountered. Let me explain. My family and I live in Atlanta, and we'd occasionally drive up north to visit our extended family in upstate Virginia. It is a very long and boring trip there, but it was worth it as we had only gone to see them once a year and we would be staying for a few nights. This year, they had invited us to stay for Christmas as we had never celebrated it with them before and figured it would be a nice stay. To cut to the chase, we get there around dinner time on Christmas Eve and everyone was just about done setting the table for us to eat. After we all ate, my uncle proposed to us kids that we go play manhunt out in the backwoods as long as it wasn't snowing too hard. For those of you who don't know what manhunt is, it's basically like hide and seek flashlight tag. Everybody is divided into two teams. One team is the hunters, while the other team were the runners, and whoever the last person standing was got a small prize. Each of us were equipped with a flashlight while my uncle kept a close eye on us. In this case, I was on the runners team, and my uncle had given my team a good minute to pick a hiding spot. I chose to hide behind an old barrel that was thrown into the woods years ago. Even though it was a little ways into the woods, it was still a great hiding spot. Eventually, my uncle had blown the whistle announcing that the opposing team was coming to find us. I ever so quickly ducked behind this large barrel about a good 25 feet away from the house. After about 5 minutes of hiding, I then began to see that the other team kept on getting closer and closer to my hiding spot, which meant that I had to move quick. I quietly walked into the woods where I was sure they couldn't see me, when I saw the dim glow of an orangish light about 20 or so feet into the woods. At first, I thought that it could have been one of the hunters, but this light wasn't as bright as a normal flashlight and the other team wasn't in the direction of this light. Being the curious kid I was, I started making my way over to it, wondering as to what it could be. My initial thought was that it was a lantern of some type, but I didn't understand as to why there would be a lantern this far out into the woods. Once I got about 10 feet away from it, right then and there, it randomly shut off, allowing me to see nothing but darkness and the light snowfall. I then thought to myself that maybe I didn't need to see what that light was. Suddenly, I began to hear heavy footsteps in the snow approach me fast from behind. With it being dark outside and still snowing, I couldn't see anyone, so I assumed it was one of the hunters. I ran as fast as I could, a bit more closer to the house where I saw everyone crowded around, including my teammates. I had asked them what was wrong, and all I remember was my dad and uncle telling me to go back inside. When we did, my mom came to tell me and my cousins that there had been a police officer that came up to the door and informed them about a few locals who reported a serial rapist in the area. My blood ran cold as she told us this, and I immediately explained what had happened to me in the woods. Needless to say, we called the police back and they have a team out searching in the backwoods. However, they never did end up finding whoever chased me in those woods, and we never found out what that light was. I haven't been back up there since, and neither have my parents, and we don't plan on ever going back up there anytime soon.